The woods are never really empty. People like to think of them as peaceful, quiet, a place to escape. But the silence isn't natural, it's suffocating. When the crickets stop, when the air feels too still, it means something else is listening. Something waiting. The following are two disturbing true stories from people who went alone into the woods and came back changed forever. If you ever thought the forest was safe, these will make you think again. Story 1. The man at the tree line. I used to love the woods. Northern Minnesota was my home, and the endless forest around Lake Vermilion was like my backyard. I hunted, camped, and hiked alone since I was a teenager. That summer, I was 19. I decided to spend the weekend camping alone near the lake. I packed light, tent, knife, flashlight, some food. I left my phone at home. Back then it felt freeing to disconnect. The hike was easy. 2 hours into the pines and I set up camp at a small clearing by the water. The lake shimmered orange under the setting sun. Frogs croaked, and the forest hummed with insects. I started a small fire, cooked beans, and leaned back against a log. Everything was perfect until I heard it. A crack, like a branch snapping under heavy weight. I froze. My stomach knotted. I tried to laugh it off. Deer maybe, bear at worst. Then it came again. Crack. Closer. I grabbed my flashlight and aimed it at the trees. For half a second, the beam caught something. A tall shape, too still, too long-limbed, standing between the trunks. "Hello," I called out. My voice shook. The woods went dead silent. Not a cricket. Not a breeze. Just silence pressing against me. I backed into my tent, killed the fire, and zipped the flap. I told myself it was nothing. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, circling my tent. Leaves crunching. Heavy breathing just inches from the thin nylon wall. I clamped my hand over my mouth to stay silent. The steps stopped. Right where my head lay. Then scraping. A sound of something sharp dragging slowly across the tent fabric. I thought I was going to pass out from terror. Finally, after what felt like an hour, the steps moved away. Silence returned. I stayed awake all night. When dawn broke, I stumbled out, shaking, and froze. On the tree directly across from my tent, carved deep into the bark, were words, "Found you." But that wasn't the worst part. All around my camp, hanging from low branches, were animals. Dead ones. Squirrels, a raccoon, even a fox. Their bodies gutted, tied up with strips of bark. Their eyes all gouged out. I vomited. Then I saw the footprints. Large boot prints circling my tent over and over. I ran. By the time I reached my truck, I thought I was safe. But tucked under the windshield wiper was a folded piece of paper. Scrawled in the same jagged handwriting, "Found you." I drove home shaking, almost too scared to tell my dad. He called the sheriff. They shrugged it off. "Probably kids messing with you. But kids don't gut animals and hang them in trees." I didn't go back to the woods for months. But a year later, in 2007, my dad asked me to check our old hunting cabin after a storm. I didn't want to, but I couldn't admit I was scared. I hiked out there in the afternoon. The cabin looked fine. But across from it, carved into the bark of a birch tree, were the same words. "Found you." Only this time, blood dripped down the letters. Fresh. Still wet. I turned and ran. 17 years later, I live 3 states away. I haven't camped since. I haven't hiked. I don't even like walking past trees at night. But sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, I still hear it. The sound of footsteps crunching leaves just outside my window. And last winter, when I went out to scrape ice off my car, there was a note under my windshield wiper. Same handwriting. Same 2 words. "Found you." Story 2. The silent cabin. I never feared the woods before. Colorado's Pike National Forest was like a second home to me. I hiked, camped, and backpacked since I was a teenager. The forest was silence, peace, escape. But in October 2013, everything changed. I'd just gone through a breakup and decided to clear my head with a solo 3-day hike. The forest was nearly empty. Autumn air crisp, leaves falling. The kind of quiet that feels safe. Day 1 went fine. I camped near a creek, made ramen on my little stove, watched the stars. I remember thinking, this is exactly what I needed. Day 2, though, that's when I found it. The trail twisted through thick pines when I saw something off to the right. A cabin. It wasn't on the map. The structure looked wrong, like it had been dropped in the middle of nowhere and left to rot. Log walls slick with moss. A chimney that leaned like it might collapse. The door stood half open. Curiosity gnawed at me. I shouldn't have gone closer, but I did. Inside, the air smelled like damp wood and something else. Sweet, metallic, rotten. A single wooden table stood in the center. On it lay a leather-bound notebook. I opened it. The first pages looked like a journal, weather, hunting notes, daily tasks. But as I flipped, the writing grew frantic. Entries about the watchers, about their faces in the dark. Then came drawings. Dozens of sketches of tall, faceless figures standing at tree lines, staring at the cabin. Sometimes one, sometimes a dozen. On the final page were 3 words, scrawled over and over until the paper tore. Stay inside. Stay inside. Stay inside. Something creaked behind me. I spun, door still half open, swaying in the breeze. The cabin was empty. But on the floor by the door, claw marks scraped deep into the wood. I bolted. That night, I set up camp far away. I told myself I just found some crazy hermit's journal. Nothing more. But around midnight, I woke to a sound. Footsteps. Slow. Crunching. Circling my tent. My blood froze. I unzipped the flap just an inch. In the moonlight, I saw it. A figure. Too tall. Too thin. Its head cocked at an impossible angle. Standing perfectly still at the tree line. I blinked, and it was gone. But when I stepped out at dawn, footprints circled my tent. Human. Barefoot. Each print smeared with dark, dried blood. I decided to leave. Cut the trip short. But as I hiked, the woods felt wrong. Every time I glanced behind me, I swore I saw movement. A shadow ducking between trees. A face just beyond sight. By noon, I was exhausted. I stopped, set my pack down, and drank water. That's when I heard it. The creak of a door. I looked up, and my stomach dropped. Through the trees, just 20 feet away, stood the same cabin. The same crooked chimney. The same half-open door. But I'd hiked miles away. The door creaked wider. On the ground in front of it lay the notebook, its pages fluttering in the wind. I didn't touch it. I ran. By the time I reached the trailhead, night was falling. My legs shook as I reached my truck. Relief flooded me, until I opened the door and smelled it. That same sweet, metallic rot. Heart hammering, I checked the back seat. Empty. I started the engine and drove. Didn't stop until sunrise. When I got home, I unpacked my bag. At the very bottom, under my clothes and gear, was the notebook. But it wasn't the same. The sketches had changed. Now they were of me, sleeping in my tent, drinking by the creek, running through the woods. Even one of me opening my truck door. The final page had only one line, written in fresh black ink. We are inside now. I burned the notebook. Or tried to. The pages blackened, but the words never fully disappeared. I don't hike anymore. Don't camp. Don't even go near the woods. But some nights, just before sleep, I hear it again, the slow creak of a door swinging open. And I know the cabin is still out there, waiting for me to step inside. Don't even go near the woods. But some nights, just before sleep, I hear it again, the slow creak of a door swinging open. And I know the cabin is still out there, waiting for me to step inside. Waiting for me to step inside.